Hi everybody, hope you're all well. Looking forward to reading you one of my favourite stories from when my girls were little, my Sarah and Emma, and it's called Snowy, and it's by Burley Doherty, and the gorgeous illustrations are by Keith Bowen. The blurb on the back says, Rachel lives on a narrowboat. There are so many wonderful things she loves about living on a boat, but most of all, Rachel loves Snowy, the beautiful barge horse. When her teacher asks the class to bring their pets, Rachel can't take Snowy to school because she's a working horse. Rachel is terribly disappointed until a very special school outing is organised. So here we go. Hope you enjoy it as much as my children did. Rachel doesn't live in a house. She lives in a kind of barge called a narrowboat on a kind of river called a canal. Her boat is painted yellow and red and blue. There are castles and roses painted on the side of it and on the buckets and kettles on the roof. At night, when she goes to bed, she can feel the narrowboat rocking gently from side to side. She can hear the slish, slosh of the water against its sides. Everything inside is small and cosy and bright, and she lives there with her mum and dad. She loves her narrowboat. It's called Betelgeuse, which is a kind of star, but Rachel calls it Beetlejuice. The best thing about living on a boat, better than the rocking at night, better than the castles and roses, better than the splish, splosh of the water on its sides, is Snowy. And there's Snowy. Snowy is a boat horse. She lives in a stable on the banks of the canal, and her job is to pull Beetlejuice along the water when Rachel's mum and dad take people for rides. She's as white as a horse of snow. She's taller than Dad. She has long hair like feathers round her hooves. Mum puts a bridle on her, and ropes with coloured bobbins on, and jingling bells, and shining brasses, and under her tail she has a stick called a swingle tree to hitch the long, long rope to. The other end of the rope is tied to Beetlejuice. When Mum clicks her tongue and says, "Come on, Snowy," she lowers her head and pulls. Then she plods along the towpath, and her long rope stretches out behind her, and Beetlejuice floats along the canal like a painted swan. "Please, please, can I take Snowy to school?" Rachel asked her mum one morning. "Miss Sniff said we can take our pets today." "Snowy isn't a pet," said Mum. She brushed Rachel's yellow hair as if she was brushing Snowy's tail. "She has to work for a living, like me and Dad and Mrs. Smith." She tied Rachel's hair in plaits and put coloured ribbons on. "But can't she have a day off just today?" Rachel made her eyes round and big to show how much she wanted to take Snowy to school, but Mum wasn't looking. "No," said Mum, "Snowy has to work today." Rachel cried all the way to school, but Mum didn't change her mind. And that day, Benny brought a grey rabbit that shivered like the grass in the wind. Simon brought a fish with raggedy fins that floated in its bowl like a golden shirt on a washing line. Yasmin brought a stick insect that pretended to be just an old twig. Will wobbled his front tooth with his tongue. "Where's your pet?" they asked Rachel. Rachel put her finger through the buttonhole in her cardigan. "She's gone to work," she said. They all laughed so much that some of them started to cough. Will wobbled his tooth again, his tongue squished in and out and around it. "What's she like?" Rachel closed her eyes. "She's as big as a mountain," she said. "And she's got bells and ribbons and a swingle tree, and she smells like a haystack." Everybody laughed again. Rachel kept her eyes closed. "And she's got feathers round her feet," she said. "I'd rather have my stick insect," said Yasmin. Rachel cried. That evening, Miss Smith came to the canal and sat on the grass with Mum. Dad made some tea in the little kitchen called the galley. He whistled his favourite tune and toasted some tea cakes and put yellow runny butter on them, and they sat in the sun and ate them. There were lots of people sitting on the grass outside the narrowboats. Some of them were playing banjos and mouth organs, and some of them were gossiping about each other, and some of them were just enjoying the sunshine. But Rachel went into the dark stable that smelt of haystacks, and she put her arms round one of Snowy's legs. She rested her head against her soft white side and cried. Next afternoon at school, Miss Smith told the class that they weren't going to have a story that day. They all folded their arms and looked tidy and promised to be good if they could have a story. But Miss Smith laughed and said they were going to have something even better than a story. She took them outside, and Will's mum and Benny's dad and Mrs. Lacey, the dinner lady, all joined them, all smiling their heads off and full of secrets. "Are we going for a walk, Miss Smith?" Rachel asked. Miss Smith held her hand and said she could help to lead the way. And the amazing thing was that their walk took them all the way to Rachel's canal and right up to where Beetlejuice was moored. "This is where Rachel lives," said Miss Smith. Everybody loved Beetlejuice. "It's got flowers painted on it," they shouted. Rachel pulled up her socks and folded her arms and smiled. Then she heard the most wonderful sound in the world. It was snowy.